patient. I'll hit them on our terms. When we're good and ready. We inherited our freedom. Now it's up to all of us to fight for it.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, where the fight begins and information never sleeps.
It is no secret that the so-called mainstream media is best described as controlled propaganda. Countless news stories are either totally ignored or spun with half-truths, and because of this, essential facts and vital information are often compromised. Join Dr. Ott every Friday night on Studio B at 10 p.m. Eastern and learn why The Story Behind the Story was nominated for a Peabody Award in its second year of producing unparalleled broadcasting excellence in 1997. That is, if you really care about learning the truth.
Hello, Privyet, Dobry dzień, Pałacha, Huyanava, Daloha. Hola, Jumbo, Sokales, Buongiorno, Allo, Chefach, Zdrasti. Oh, hello, good evening. I am your host, Mr. Rowe. And you're listening to Reality Extraction at Revolution Radio and FreedomSlip.com. Today is Thursday, the 21st of May, 2015, and you are listening to Studio B. Just want to say thank you to Mr. Hawk, Nighthawk, Mike Ringley, for allowing me to ramble on and have a voice. Also, a shout out to Sherry in Tahoe, hey to R in Amsterdam, hello to Thomas in Walnut Creek. I'd like to say hello to everyone in chat, everyone at the California Health Club. Tonight we have a very special guest. So let's jump right in, shall we? We are the #1 listener-sponsored radio network on the planet, and we do rely on your donations, not the corporate sponsors, because we don't play that corporate game here. Because we don't like the companies telling us what we can and cannot say. So if you go to freedomslips.com, there is a chat room there, and in there's a few buttons on the left-hand side. Shows the schedule, and there's a donate button and some links. If you could click on the donate button and maybe you donate $1 or $100 or $1,000,000, we'd really appreciate it, because that keeps us going on the air. Hey, Nighthawk, Mad Painter, Bray Ross 790, Hal 9000, Hammerhead, Surrey Sunflower, Vo Bear, Hated Patriot, Comet, Jer Bear, Patrick Anglish, Shanona AFK, This Blue Monkey, Tracy Foster, Arlo, Ost, Paul Bernard, Bond, Cortec, Dallas Goldbug, Doc Who, Easy P, George H, Hannah Hemp, Hippie Chick, I Am Lone Frog, and Lioness. Hello also to Lozo1, Monty Dean Down Under, Mr. Rowe, that's me, MTJ, Noodles 4064, Olive 2M, my brother, Pappy Smurf, Potato 8, Cordy Dragon, Rhapsody, Rev Radio, Rika, Sepson. Take a breath, breathe. Angela taught me, breathe in, breathe out. Thank you, this Blue Monkey. Swagin, Thunderbird, Turner, White Wolf 2000, Willpower, Why Not, and the Zippies 405, 67, 57, 734, and Zipster. Hi to everyone. You know, we take it at face value that what we see on the television, in the news, the politics, the events in our world are true. We assume that what we see is what we get, and we often never really question, never even question what is on the surface would appear to be true, but is in fact a very intricate subterfuge. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. My special guest tonight is Mr. Chiarini, the Dallas Goldbug. At the age of 15, he was hired to illustrate a book, High Treason. This book was #1 for 6 weeks, stayed on the New York Times bestseller list for 16 weeks. Oliver Stone actually later adapted the book into a movie called JFK. You might have heard of it, as well as writing the foreword for the second book at 18, which he also illustrated, The Killing of a President. It is considered one of the best graphical depictions of the believed events that took place that day. But if you actually watch Ed's latest documentary, you may see the real story, as we have all been duped by those behind that event. Ed's first video documentary on the JFK topic was co-produced with Grodin and called JFK, The Case for Conspiracy, which was released through Blockbuster Entertainment. Mr. Chiarini has worked for several large corporations like Halliburton, ExxonMobil, Savage Design, Ashford.com, Assyrian.com, Compaq IPAC, the Houstonian Wildcat Golf Club, Wildcat Golf Club, also the Redstone Group, Disney, Ambrosi West Coast, Black Dot Corp, Neiman Marcus. He is also trained as an avionic technician for the F-15 and F-22 Raptor aircraft. After receiving an honorable discharge from the Air Force, Mr. Chiarini put his knowledge and love for the web and his technical expertise to work as he focused those skills on educating parents about the dangers that lurk online, and founded WellAwareNet. The fast-paced web safety market soon was filled with software that finally filled the hole that Ed's WellAwareNet successfully lectured about. So WellAwareNet stopped functioning in that respect, but was reborn after Ed witnessed inconsistencies surrounding the shooting of Arizona State Republican Gabby Giffords. Comparing the first released mugshot of the alleged shooter, Jared Lee Loeffner, with the second release reported to be the same individual, it became apparent to Ed's trained eye that the images were being manipulated via Photoshop, a program that he's an expert in using. He decided to look into this fraud, and the Jared Loeffner mugshot fraud, that is, led him to put his investigative and technical savvy skills to the test, which proved very valuable, as the medium of the web was where he found the information propagating the most. His years of investigative work and experience in the corporate advertising and energy fields, combined with his early years' involvement in the JFK research, allow him the confidence and the ability to withstand the constant onslaught of attacks his opposition create in an unsuccessful attempt to divert and discredit him in his work. In his free time, Ed spends some of his time researching alternative fuel sources, in particular hydrogen and oxygen produced from water electrolysis. Recently, his research enabled him to patent his electrode designs, which many researchers have called the holy grail of oxy-hydrogen fuel cells. Multiple electrode stacks and structure for the electrolysis of water is his patent. His creativity and passion for learning, combined with his extensive electronic and chemistry training, make for little free time, as he's constantly researching new technological developments. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great honor to introduce and welcome to the show the Dallas Goldbug, Mr. Ed Chiarini. Hello.
Hello.
And welcome, Ed. I've looked at your website, and it's pretty much a mind blower.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's difficult to since it's such a large spectrum of work, it's very difficult to get somebody to actually not be pretty much taken aback by it at first, until they really start to comb through it and realize that it all has a theme behind it, and basically it all hinges upon the point that our mainstream media has been lying to us since day one about pretty much everything that you see on TV. So once you understand that concept, then it becomes much more a cohesive website.
And it looks like it's not only, it goes way back. I mean, it doesn't just, it's not something new. This is something that's hundreds of years old.
Oh, probably longer than that. I've been able to trace at least, well, let me first define what I do. I mainly use photographs and video, of course, in modern day times, video, but the photographs that we have of history are the only real, I believe, documentation of the actual people of who they are. Now, the events that we're told that those individuals take part in, of course, are just words that they claim happened, and I understand that people lie. So the only thing that I really like to focus on are the photographic evidence. And with that, when I started to realize that the individuals that we see in the media are not who they say they are, and they're using a pseudonym, you start to understand that when you look at the photographs of our forefathers and of the presidents, you start to see that there's individuals around them, and some of the presidents themselves have played multiple roles in the creation of what we believe is our U.S. history. And it goes back, like I said, further than that. So it sort of is I sort of stop when it comes to the photographic evidence, because past that, like I said, it's just words, or it's just written text, and I honestly I don't put too much credit into that. So I try to just keep it just with the photographic evidence, and pretty much from the 1900s to present.
And you utilize the ears as a forensic tool, as well as the teeth, and I guess I see you have some of the faces line up, like the one with Nancy Pelosi, for example, where the lines just all match.
Yeah, the thing with the photographic evidence when it comes to the face, there's different techniques. And remember, we're talking about individuals who are well trained in the entertainment field, or in photography. So they have different actual techniques that they can use, different lenses that can create a lens distortion. So sometimes those faces don't line up as well as we think they should. But when we look at the evidence as a whole, and we can use other biometric measurements, such as, like you mentioned, the teeth and the ears and the back of the hand, the veins, they are, when you put them all together, they create a case that is pretty much undisputable. The ears, for example, if people aren't familiar with that technology, and this goes back many, many decades, you can go to IEEE.org, and they have many peer review papers that are written by established figures and, of course, government agencies, FBI, CIA, things like that. They have their peer reviews, and they've documented that the ears are as good, if not better, than a fingerprint. Now, the unique thing about that is you don't need the person's permission to actually do the examination. And since these individuals that I've been looking at are in the media and entertainment field, we have a lot of photographs to work with. So we have a very good baseline that we can prove that this person is at least one individual that we see on the screen. Well, then when that actor does what they do, they act and they take on different roles, they are basically identified by their ears, and we can show that that is the same individual taking part in a different event. Now, I don't have any problem with actors doing what they do. That's fine. I enjoy movies. I enjoy making movies. But it's the actors that I focus on are the ones that cross that ethical line, that they choose to take on roles that they know will be used by the mainstream media to trick or fool the public into believing something that didn't take place. And then combine that with the fact that they then push legislation on top of that, that's when I have a very big problem with what they do.
And you brought up something that, now this is an international deception, but you brought up there, not on the show, but I've seen that you talk about a loophole. When these individuals run for office, for example, they cannot be held accountable because we just don't know who they are.
Correct. That was the candidate oath form that I found. Because when I started looking at these officials that are in our government, I found many of them that are actually established comedians from well-known shows like Second City TV or Mad TV and Saturday Night Live. Several of them. I mean, it was to the point where I was just really amazed at the fact that these people have pulled this off. And when you look at the evidence, it's you can't deny when some of these individuals are who they are. But so then knowing that, and I know that we live in a land where we're governed by laws and rules, there had to be a loophole that was allowing them to do this. Because personally, if you look at, say, Jesse Ventura, he admits that that's not his real name. He openly admits that. And he openly admits that that's not even a registered pseudonym to his person. But yet, as governor of Minnesota, he signed official documents with that pseudonym. So when you look at that, that's a real case, a real world scenario that we have to deal with. So let's say Jesse Ventura, we look back on it and he accidentally did something that is criminal. Well, we couldn't hold him accountable because we don't know his real name. We couldn't even file paperwork on him. So knowing this, I decided that there had to be that loophole somewhere in the legal system that allows them to do this. And this is what I found, that candidate oath form. Everybody who runs for office has to fill this form out. And on that front page, and feel free to, you can Google it and you can download it from your local state office. If you're going to run to be governor or mayor or whatever official, you have to fill this form out. On that front page, it says down at the bottom, personally known by or shown ID. And what that does is the person is allowed to use a pseudonym and then bring in a third person, a friend or associate, whomever they want, to vouch for their identity. Now, that friend that they bring in has to show their ID to the notary, but the person that's running for office never has to show theirs. So at that point, you've now got around all accountability. You can never sue that person because you don't know who they are. And that is a huge, huge problem from my perspective.
Oh, absolutely. Now, this is international, so I don't know if this same sort of loophole exists, let's say, in the United Kingdom or in Europe. But I guess we have individuals that are members of royalty, royal families, and families that I've really never heard of that are actually playing multiple roles. Is that correct?
That's correct. When you look at history, if we can believe past those the photographic evidence and look at history per what they tell us, the owners of the media from date far back as, let's say, the Roman times, there's always been a very close tie between the owners of that media company and the governing official, the president or the king or the emperor. If you follow the U.S. history, you'll see that all of our presidents are very closely related to the owners of the media, like their brother-in-law or their brother or a family member. And if we can look at JFK, at Jackie, when he got out of office, so of course, with the assassination and all that, what did she do afterwards? She became a magazine editor. You see John, what did he do? He started a magazine company. The family members are all involved in the media business. But then when you trace back the owners of those media firms, you find that they stem from royalty. Now, there's been the question of, are royals actually the real royals? Do they have any governing power, or are they just figureheads, or just basically frontmen for that type of government? I can't tell you, but I can say this, that when the Queen decides to go to war, or she decides to stop a law that's going to be put in place, that to me has power. That's definitely somebody who can command somebody to do something, and they will put their life in harm's way to protect the Queen or protect their country. That is power, no matter what we say about the Queen, if she's real or not. So these people do have perceived power in their countries, and when you see them over here taking part in this campaign against basically an alternative media creation to undermine everything that's American, that's a big problem in my perspective as well.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Now, they're using, obviously, very advanced techniques of makeup, I would assume, to play multiple roles, yes?
Sometimes they do. Remember, if you're in a production, they have the luxury of taking multiple takes. They have post-production ability where they can alter the films or alter the media that you and I don't have. When we think of an event that we go to a party or whatnot, and there's photographs taken of us, that's it. But when these people put on a show, they can, at any time they want, they can do multiple takes. They have lighting. They have all the luxuries that Hollywood has. And post-production, like I said, being one of the main ones. So yes, that it all plays into consideration. Plus the other thing is they are very good at manipulating their faces. And this is something that as an actor they pride themselves at, as being a chameleon, being able to blend in and change and manipulate their whole personality. If we look at, trying to think, Peter Sellers, he's oftentimes, back when he was being interviewed, he was oftentimes quoted as saying, "I don't know who I really am. I've played so many characters, I don't feel comfortable being myself. I have lost who I really am inside." So they take on the persona of that character that they're playing, and some of them take it as real as they can get. So they establish relationships with people in the real world. They will play that role for a long period of time, say if it's an elected official. And at that point, this is where the unique thing is that I've been able to use against them. If the individual is an actor and they're brought in to play an elected official, say a senator or a representative, that's a long-term position. In order for them to play that long-term position, if they have a real-world family, which most of them do, they have to bring that family in to that situation as well and make them known to the scam. That's when you are able to point out who these people are. And when you see that I say it's this actor, and that actor has a wife, and here's their children, and you look at the government official that I say they are, and standing right next to him is that wife, and there's the children, you have a pretty good match right there, and it's hard for them to deny it.
Yeah, that I've noticed also doing my own personal research on this subject is you definitely would have to be an expert, and your family and people close to you would definitely have to know. And obviously the other person to play and you would never be seen in the same place at the same time. It would just be impossible to do.
Well, remember, we're talking about Hollywood. So they can shoot things and then they can air them later at the same time when that person is, on the live TV. So they have that ability to do that. It's a magical world when it comes to TV. So we have to be careful with that.
That's true. In fact, I think, that there's a photograph that's very, I'm skeptical of. It's the one with Aaron Russo talking to Rockefeller.
Yeah, that one I looked at, and, if that's not the same person, because there's a lot of problems with that photograph, he's definitely related to them. So it's, you got maybe two brothers sitting there working out this scene. But when you look at the bigger picture of it, it's just a whole scam because they're all related to one another and they're just playing this role in the media scam. So, whether or not it's actually him or his brother or a cousin, who knows? But, we just have to take it for what it is.
We don't have any idea because how many families are involved in this, I guess.
Well, of course, I can't tell you an exact number because I don't know, and I'm sure there's plenty of them that I haven't found yet. But from what I've found, the mainstream, the big six, as they're called, the conglomerates that own all the corporations that we know as the networks, I've been able to identify approximately, I'd say, a good 5 or 6 core families. And from that, there's, of course, associates and people that they've worked with or other family members that I just don't know of. But they seem to work together in groups. So when you see one, it's a very good chance that you're going to see the rest of the family or their known associates from a TV show that they all work together on the same event and just playing again and again and again different roles. So
okay, we're going to take a quick break. We right back. Listener sponsor radio at www.freedomslips.com. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. And now, we return you to Reality Abstraction with your host, Mr. And we are back. We are talking about a global deception. We're with the Dallas Goldbug, Mr. Ed Chiarini, and we're discussing an actor-based reality, a deception that is both international and quite old. We don't know how old it is, but the implications are pretty grand. Ed, welcome back.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, before we went to break, we were talking about the deception. When we left off, was the methods that they use, I think, and this the implications here. Virtually everything we see on the news, whether it's Charles Manson, whether it's World War II, because according to your site, even Adolf Hitler was one of these individuals.
Correct. Yeah, the thing about that's one of the really touchy points. When I was in the military, I was in the Air Force, and I signed the oath, of course, to protect the country from enemies both foreign and domestic. But I also signed the oath that I would obey my commanding officer's commands. So when I started to find out that our chain of command has been corrupted by these individuals who aren't who they say they are, I had a very big problem with that, because when they order you to go and put your life in harm's way and to take another human being's life, from my perspective, that's probably one of the biggest things that they could ask you to do. And so there's people that died during the war, and for the reasons that they died for, and please don't take me as saying that they're not heroes, because they are. My grandfather stormed the beach in Normandy. They died for what they believed was a real threat to their country. But when you look at the reasons why we go to war, and you start to peel back those layers and see the corporations behind the actual items that you need for war, like the steel, the raw steel, and the fuel, and you see that at the core, these owners of those corporations are, again, those same family members that are in control of the media, that you get a bigger picture of the scam that was pulled on us. And then when you start to really identify who those leaders are, and see that there's direct ties to, of course, Disney, who I say that Adolf Hitler is Kermit Roosevelt, and is actually Disney. You see that Disney was given the contract to do the propaganda for the war for both Europe and America. And after the war, he was also given the head position at the CIA, which is not the CIA, and it's not the creative artists that are in Hollywood. It was a media branch of the government that was headed up by Nelson Rockefeller. So you see that there is this unity between government and media, and an admittance that the media, of course, is used for propaganda to sell the war to the people. And this happened on both sides, on America and in Germany, and of course all the other countries that were involved. So to see that Germany and the German people get a stigma of because of the war and Adolf Hitler, when it's really not the people. The people, they're the same as us. They're the same as the soldiers that fought for what we believed as a threat to protect our country. They're the ones that died for this cause. And we are the same. We've been abused by our governments. We've been lied to by our governments. And it's a shame that, of course, Germany is now, they're stigmatized with what their media and what their government has basically caused. And it's not the people's fault. So that's one of the things that I've been trying to let people know, that, even though the Adolf Hitler was fake, the war is real. The war was definitely real, and people died. So that's there's a line right there where reality crosses over into the fictional world, and it's used against us.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is so way beyond crisis acting and false flag. I mean, the entire. If we're to believe that this is what it is, which it certainly looks like it is, the entire world is literally a stage, and virtually everyone famous and everything in the media is all a big lie, basically. It's all.
Yeah, well, if we look at, for example, this is what I try to teach people. There are a few things in this world that are real, and two of those things are jail and the IRS. So I've seen the IRS take a friend's restaurant from them at gunpoint. So that's real. And I've been thrown in jail many times for what I've been doing here, and always been, of course, found innocent and let out. But that's a very real situation. So we're ruled by laws. Now, people have to understand that corporations are ruled by their corporate charter. So if we understand that all those stations, and let's take it back to the days of, let's say, Kennedy's time, or even at the war's time, there weren't any TVs. Well, TV was introduced in 1933 in Belgium, but as TV began, there was very few stations. So the perception of the world that they created for the people was very easy to manipulate those individuals that were watching that. So as TV grew, I remember when I was a kid, we only had 4 stations really that we could watch, and then there was the UHF stations, but there was your major networks. So when you understand that those networks are corporations, and those corporations are owned by individuals that are basically own the media, you have to understand that there's a bias that's instantly put in place, and you're never going to hear anything bad about any of the affiliates that are associated with those networks. People don't really understand that. And they also don't understand that as a network, you have a license through the FCC. You have rules that you have to abide by. And, of course, there's laws that you have to abide by when it comes to, say, identifying a person and accusing them of a crime when there hasn't been an investigation or there hasn't been any charges or, of course, a verdict on that person. So you'll never see, and if you do see a network saying that this person is guilty of this, and then they say that there's never been any charges brought against them, if that were a real situation, they would be sued. If you see a situation where a school shooting and the media is announcing this minor's name on the news, know for a fact that it's not real. They'd be sued. And the biggest one that I get called all the time by individuals who are in the healthcare industry, when you see an event and you see a liaison from a hospital come out, and let's just say for the Ebola thing, and they say, Mr. Jones is in our care and he's one of our patients, right there, know that it's fake. Because a hospital can't release personal information like that to the public. They can't do it. A nurse can't even open up the person's file in a hospital unless they have a reason to, or they can get fired. The HIPAA laws are very strict. So I used to get many of nurse and doctor calling me up saying, this event is fake. There's no way that this hospital would announce that person's name on the air like that. They can't do it. So when you start to look at things in a logical perspective and understand laws, then you can quickly discern if this event is real or not. And more cases than not, it will be fake. Now, there was a double homicide here at my condominium complex. I know that event was real. I saw it. So it was real. The news ran the story for 2 nights. But here's the thing. Everything that you see on that news, if it's fake or real, it is there for a reason. And that reason is to generate a profit. Every second of broadcast time is very valuable to them. They have to maximize their profit because it's a corporation. It's a charter that they have to do, or their shareholders would have their heads. So they have to pick and choose what they're going to air. So did they put the double homicide on the news? Yes. But what did they do? They spun it in a racial way because the person that murdered the other person, there was an Asian and a black individual. So they spun it as a race type of thing, where that's where they can instigate people and get people to fear and get people to react. Everything on that news is for you to react to. They're not going to tell you everything's great, everything's peaceful, this person's fine, because if they did that and created a viewer that was logical and critically thinking, you would critically think yourself out of buying all the trinkets that they're trying to sell you and all the fear-mongering that they push on us. So knowing those basic things, you can really look at the news in a different perspective and understand that it's being fed to you for a reason and it's fake.
Yeah, I've noticed as well, even an entire, how do I put this? Pablo Escobar. It's that whole scene, that whole deal with Pablo Escobar is just another show, correct?
Yes, absolutely. These villains that were shown throughout the years, and also these government officials that say, I'm trying to think of somebody offhand, Kissinger and all that are demonized in the mainstream media or in the alternative media today. If these were real people that actually went home and were that person, they would be under constant scrutiny by cameras and by people individually that are concerned about the situation. They wouldn't be able to live a life. So they're not real people. They play a role that they're hired to do. And the mainstream media then has content that they can use, say, for like the JFK event, where the next 50 years they've profited from that event. And I've shown in many cases that it was a hoax. So people, they don't understand that, but all of a sudden they realize that, when that event happened, it took 13 years for the Zapruder film to ever be shown to the public. So the only thing that people had to base as being real of the JFK assassination was what the media told them and some of the static photographs. They were never shown the video, the Zapruder film, until 13 years later. So they're basing everything that they know on individuals' word of mouth and the media. Now that, to me, spells disaster, especially when you start to pick it apart and you see that it's this event is fake and these individuals that are your eyewitnesses are all related to one another. then you start to really undermine their trillion-dollar business that they invented out of it. So you understand that the profit is immense that they can make from creating a Pablo Escobar or creating a Saddam Hussein, and it's just all a character that they can pin to a corporation that they basically are doing business with. So, war's money, but the media is even bigger money than the war.
Now, for those who don't know who Pablo Escobar also is, the individual also plays an individual by the name of Gene Wilder, if I'm correct.
That's correct.
If you look at the mother of Pablo Escobar and the mother of Gene Wilder, there's a similarity there. Now, I had a question. Let's assume, because Charles Manson is also on this list.
Correct.
He apparently went to jail, but if he's one of these actors, he really would not be sitting in a jail cell. So how would they play this off? I mean, would there be higher-ups? Would there be somebody else that fills his spot? I mean, what would they do? Because I'm pretty sure people have gone to visit Mr. Manson in prison.
Well, I don't know if they have or not, but here's one thing that I can say. Let's take, for example, the Jared Loughner situation and the Gabrielle Gifford shooting. In Arizona, same as Texas here, we have a victims compensation fund. And what that fund is if you're the victim of a violent crime, all your hospital bills and all your bills associated with that crime are paid for by the state. It's a given. You don't have to sign up for anything. It's automatically given to you. You have no say about it. Well, how they do that is the individual that they have in custody, the DA immediately when they're put in custody puts a lien on that person. And that's so they pay into the fund when that person is found guilty or whatnot. They have to immediately put that lien on that individual when they put them in jail. This is it's written in the laws. You can see in Arizona, that's the way they do it. So I said, okay, well, great. If this person is not in jail, I'll be able to tell, because if there's a lien put on them, that's pretty much a good document that I can trust. There's no lien put on this person. This person doesn't exist. And of course, to back that up, you never see any footage of him in court. All you see is court sketches, which has always been suspect. So, you see, okay, they tell you that Manson is in jail. And let's say you're an inmate, you're in jail. You hear that Manson's in jail, but you may never see him because he's somewhere else in the prison. He's in a special isolation, chamber because he's crazy and he's a famous person. So, I mean, they can play those little games. Now, individuals coming to visit him, I don't know. I can't say for sure who comes and visits him, but you can see that this recent event here in Waco with the biker gangs, there was a video of some individuals that were trying to make a name and say that bikers aren't who they are or aren't villains, whatever. But the individuals that were in this little media piece, and I posted it on my Facebook, they're the family members, but one of them happens to be the Charles Manson character. And when you look at Sharon Tate, the person that he was supposedly orchestrated the murder of, Sharon Tate had a brother. Well, Sharon Tate's brother looks an awful lot like Manson.
I saw that.
And then to find out he's a military officer, you see that whole military side and the orchestration side where this person couldn't talk about it if they wanted to because it could be classified. There's lots of different reasons why they can't really speak about it, but one of them, of course, is basically because they're related to the individuals that they're involved with. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if he was related to some of the media conglomerates that we're talking about.
Now, you had come across, I believe, some sort of a photo album of one of these families where there was all kinds of matches. Is that correct?
Correct. When I first started doing the Giffords event, the little girl that was supposedly murdered, the one that was born on September 11th, Christina Taylor Greene, that was a face that I remembered. And I have a unique gift. And I never knew what I could use it for growing up, but I don't forget a face when it comes to looking at a photograph. Meeting a person in 3 dimensions, sometimes that face doesn't register in my head as well as the picture or a 2-dimensional form does. So I have the ability to memorize faces. And I memorized, of course, all the faces in an event, looking at that event very closely. So I was attacked by an individual named Stuart Rhodes, who's the founder of the Oath Keepers. When I was on Joyce Riley's show, when I was putting all this information out there about the Giffords event, she had me on there as a regular guest. and I got pretty popular from that event on her show. Well, Stewart attacked me, and I decided to look into his background. And, again, we're talking about another pseudonym because E. Stewart Rhodes, he, the steward of Rhodes, is actually Todd Kyle from Homeland Security, or was from Homeland Security. And his position was the director of the domestic infrastructure. He was in charge of basically the infrastructure of the United States. So he, the steward of Rhodes. They play the name game a lot when it comes to these actors, and it's just some way that they can tag their ownership of that event. But so Stewart attacked me, and I decided to dig into his background. And while I was looking for photographs for him, I found some photographs of him at Alex Jones' studio. The thing that I want people to understand is when you're doing research and you see these events that you believe are fake, look at this photograph, look at the photographer of that event. You'll find that that photographer has to be in the know that the event is fake, or there would be problems. So they're obviously been approved to be part of that event. Well, the photographer for the Stewart Rhodes photographs was a Jennifer Sexton, and it was Jennifer Greenberg Sexton. And I saw Greenberg, and I went Greenberg, and I went Maurice Greenberg. Maybe it's his daughter, or Maurice Greenberg was the owner of AIG. He's basically one of the owners of Starco, which is the largest insurance company on the planet. About 80% of all underwriting goes through Starco. So, and Maurice is also the one that was involved with the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac problem. So I knew the name, and I wanted to see if there was any association with this person. So when I clicked on her name, it pulled up her Picasso web album. One of the photographs that I saw immediately was this little girl from the Giffords event staring right at me, but she was a little bit older, but it was obviously her. And I went, well, that's Christina Taylor Greene. How is this? So I said, okay, well, let me look into the people that are surrounding her, who are her family, and knowing from what I know of what the media tells us her family, her grandfather was supposedly Dallas Green. Well, here's a person named Michael Greenberg who looks exactly like Dallas Green. That's her grandfather. And then you start to see other individuals that we are shown to be part of that Giffords event in those photographs. So at that point, I went, wow, there's definitely something here with these albums. So all told, between Jennifer's album, Michael Greenberg's album, Tony Greenberg's album, and Vicky Greenberg, which is Michael's wife, it totaled around 5,500 photographs that I downloaded. And I didn't know who the people were at the time, other than just those main ones that I just mentioned. But I knew that there was something to this whole collection of photographs. Now, people will try to say that, okay, well, what if they're fake? Well, what you need to do is, if you're doing research and you're using photographs, you need to try to find photographs of the individual, the suspect, that span the largest amount of time frame that you can. So if you have photographs of them as a child, and then as a teen, and then as a young adult, you can get a base judgment of their ears or their physical features and see how they progressed throughout the years. Well, we can see that in these photographs, these are family photographs that are from their vacations, from their holidays, that stem from, I believe it was 2004 to present. At that time was 2011. So you have a very good understanding that this wasn't something that was some just thrown together, some albums and put out there. This was an authentic, original family album throughout the years, and their whole family documented right there. Now, people go, well, why would they put that out there? Well, if I hadn't have seen that photograph of Christina Taylor Greene and matched it with what I had recognized from what I saw in that event, it would have just been another photo album that I would have known anybody or even thought to myself to look into it even further. But it was that one photograph, that 1 second that I recognized who she was, that caused me to then look deeper into that. So they put it out there now thinking that there would be no way that anybody would ever connect them to what's going on. And unfortunately, that was a poor decision on their part.
Yeah, it's amazing because when you see some of these individuals and you do have a match, and you find more often than not that they're completely unrelated folks. It's like for example, let's talk about a member of Danish royalty who may happen to be an alternative radio talk show host.
Correct. Yeah, and the funny thing was, I just heard the other day that his son's named Max or Rex. I'm sorry, Rex, and that means king. So it's just pretty strange. But yeah, then you see the rest of his staff members. Alex Jones, we're talking about. If those people don't recognize who we're saying, there's many of his staff members there who are actually match the other members of the royal families of that area. But so again, you see the alternative media being, of course, funded and fueled by the royals. And it's the same situation over and over again.
We will take a short break and go grab yourself something to drink if you want, and we'll be right back with Mr. Ed Chiarini, the Dallas Goldbug.
Follow me.
Feeling you get when you get scammed, and you've had the wool pulled over your eyes, and you figure out that something's up. Yeah. Anyway, what we're talking about is a scam. We're talking about an international scam that sees no borders, sees no. It transcends corporate business, multimedia, entertainment. It spans politics. It is the actor-based reality that we are apparently living in. We don't know who these individuals are, but we know that they are not telling the truth. Welcome back, Mr. Chiarini.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
So, yeah, it's an honor to have you. This is a mind-blowing information. I'd like to talk about some of these people, who they are. Now, we apparently, Mr. Jones is a member of royalty, the Danish royalty. We also have folks from politics. Let's take, for example, Miss Nancy Pelosi.
Correct. Nancy Pelosi, as we've looked at, we have her back of the hand for the vein pattern, and we've matched that. That is Jane Fonda. Now, Jane Fonda, of course, played a very pivotal role back in the 70s as a political activist. So you see this person playing both sides of the fence. She's, of course, Nancy Pelosi also, we know, signed for Barack Obama's candidate oath form. She vouched for him. So there's a very big tie right there. Now, it's interesting to see then, of course, who Jane Fonda was married to. Of course, Ted Turner, and there you go, a big media individual right there. So there's direct ties to that again. The alternative media that you mentioned before with Alex Jones, you'll see that, of course, these individuals have corporate sponsorship. They're backed, of course, and they're on, of course, networks that are owned by conglomerates. Clear Channel being Alex Jones, and that's GCN. And, of course, you can take that all the way straight back up to Disney. Now, when I was on Joyce Riley's The Power Hour, that was, of course, on GCN. That came on right before Alex's show. I explained to Joyce that when I was doing the investigation work, that it was looking like these family members were associated with Disney. And I explained that to her. I said, I'm not going to hold back information. I'm not going to, of course, be a gatekeeper of this information. But I said, I have to let you know that it's looking like it's going to be Disney as being one of the major manipulators of what's going on. And, of course, Disney is one of the big six, and they're probably the biggest media conglomerate there is on the planet. And you can understand why when you see they're related to the people that own Facebook and all the other data gathering centers. So they have all the data about what people do and what people like. So it's very easy for them to stay on top of the marketing. But when I told her this, I knew that it would probably end my time there because, of course, that's their owner. And this was an eye-opening type of revelation for me, that I started to realize that what the media really is. And they are bound by those laws and bound by those corporate charters. So you have to understand that they can't say certain things. They can't do certain things. They're limited by law. And when you see them doing things blatantly that would get people arrested, or saying things that would get them sued, you have to put back on your ability to critically think and use logic and reason, and to understand that no matter what they tell you, I don't care how many times they have a person on there that says, I'm related to this person, or I was there at that event and I saw the person get killed, they're lying. They're actors. And you just have to understand that you're going to get attacked when you start to put that information out there. Like, if you notice my YouTube channel and my Facebook account, I've been shut down many times and had to fight. And for my YouTube channel, it took 6 months to get it back on the last time. And I can't do any monetizing of it, so I can't make any money off of it. They shut all that down. But you see that there's a overwhelming amount of attention drawn to my account, and it's just bashing me personally. They never touch the facts. They never touch the work that I've done, like the Nancy Pelosi, and look at the hands. And okay, I'm more than willing, if somebody wants to step up and do an examination using the biometrics that they find, using photographs, whatnot, of back of her hand, and compare it to Jane Fonda and prove me wrong. I would love to be wrong. I would so love to, for all this stuff to be wrong, because then I could go back to my normal life and work on my hydrogen cell and my patents. I would love to do that. But unfortunately, I can't, because this is so, the mountain of evidence is so massive at this point that they're either going to have to deal with what I've put out there, or they're just going to have to ignore me. And that's a matter of time before enough people become aware of the information that I have out there. So it's been very difficult at times, but I'm in a position where I don't have, like, say, a wife or children or an ex-wife or whatnot that they can use as leverage. Because if I had those things, I probably wouldn't be doing the things that I do, because I would be afraid that they would be held accountable for, my actions and used as leverage against me. So I wouldn't want to put them in that situation. But so I'm in a very unique position. It doesn't stop them from attacking me, though, which they do all the time. And the day before the Kennedy assassination anniversary, they threw me in jail on 7-year-old warrant that they just made up. And then when, of course, my lawyer went to court, they threw it out and said, "Oh, sorry, it was a mistake." But, nevertheless, I was thrown in jail for the night. So they can play these games all they want, but when it all boils down to it, the facts are the facts, and regardless of whether I'm there to promote or push those facts, they stand on their own two legs. So,
now, have you ever had anyone that you talked about? Have they come at you personally and said, "Look, I'm not this person"? Have they ever actually done that?
There has been several occasions. One in particular, let's say one of the more recent ones was Philip Seymour Hoffman. I caught him on my Facebook friends list several times as posing as a different person, and I called him out on it. And next thing I know, he sent a photograph of him flipping me off. And basically at that point, his account was shut down. And I believe it was 2 days later is when they killed off the character that he played in Philadelphia, where I'm from. So I believe, and this is speculation on my part, I believe there's rules when it comes to engagement with me, that the best way to deal with me is to ignore me, because any attention that they bring to me is attention that they don't want to have come my way. And for example, the New York Times did a article on me, a hit piece on me, where they didn't even interview me. They just made up a bunch of things about the Giffords event and put it all out there, and used Pima County officials, their statements saying that the FBI was investigating me, which they aren't. And they ran it in the New York Times. Because of that, it caused so much attention to be brought to me, because people were like, "Who is this crazy guy? We got to find out who he is." So they came to my website and they saw the facts and they went, "Well, this guy's not crazy at all." And I saw a spike in subscriptions and, people interested in my stuff. So at that point, I called the writer of that article, Mark Lacey, and I said, "Hey, Mark," I left a message for him because he wouldn't answer. I said, "Mark, anytime you want to do a story about me, feel free to say whatever you want about me. Just make up anything you want. You got my permission. Go for it." Because it backfired on them. So, at that point, you realize, how do they control me? Well, they just have to ignore me. Any attention is something that they don't want to give to me. So, there has been other situations where, let's say, okay, the president. I've outed him, who I believe he is, and we've matched up him and Michelle, of course, to an individual, a very famous comedian. When I called him out on this, we have teeth, we have ear, we have, of course, his sibling matches Michelle. We have all the biometrics in place, the vein pattern on the side of his head, by his temple area. We have so much biometrics that it's very difficult for them to argue what we have here. But at the same time, I had outed Steven Spielberg and for who he is. Now, all of a sudden, I get a call from a friend saying, "Hey, Ed, the White House just put a video out about you." And I'm like, "Get out of here. Just go away. You know, I don't have time for this." And they said, "No, seriously, you got to watch this video. This is about you. They take a direct shot at you." So I decided to watch it, and it was Steven Spielberg making this video about who's going to play Barack Obama. And they had Daniel Day-Lewis, who was a white actor, of course, you know, from Hollywood, playing Barack Obama, but it was actually Barack sitting there saying, "I'm Daniel Day-Lewis." But one of the scenes in there was he's looking at a mirror and he's pulling on his ears, and he goes, "It takes me forever to put these ears on." And it was a direct shot at me. And, of course, another person that was in that video was Tracy Morgan, who I just outed that week, of course, as playing a role in his accident with the Walmart truck, and then Tracy you see playing a role in Ferguson. So that was his excuse to go film that. So those three individuals that I outed in that 1 week, there they are in a little skit that they played at the press conference, the press dinner at the White House, taking a shot at me. So they do address sometimes indirectly that way, and it's pretty funny. I mean, that one right there had my jaw dropped. I was just amazed that they would even do that. So yes, they've some of them have contacted me, and I've said, you know, well, send me photographs of your ears, and they'll do it. They'll send photographs of the ear, like John Cleese, who was the Prime Minister of Spain, who he stepped down after I outed him. I said, you know, you're this person, and you know, prove it. So he sent me ear shots, and the ears matched. So basically, you know, he knew he was had, but it didn't matter. He was just going to say that's not him, and they can deny till they die all they want, but the facts remain the same.
Well, you know, if it's so widespread, at the very top, of course, they already, you know, when you think about it, they already run the planet.
Well, you know, okay, the actors that we're led to believe are in control, the president or our senators and our officials. I believe that they're paid by the media networks, the conglomerates. So I believe it's the families that own those networks that are actually running the perception of our reality, what we see on the TV that we believe is real, and you know, that's pretty much it. Because you even heard Barack say several times that, you know, "Oh, how did I find out about the event? Oh, I saw it on TV. I found out about it at the same time you people did," you know, talking to the press. So it was like he isn't the one that was being informed. It was the press or the media telling him an event took place, and that's how he knew about it. So it's the network owners that I believe are in control of the country, and those, like we said, are related to the royals. So again, we see the international connection.
So folks like now, even Mr. David Rockefeller is one of these individuals. And who is David Rockefeller?
Well, I think the Rockefeller name is a pseudonym, and I believe at the time when Standard Oil was created, there was even before that Rockefeller name was basically used as their pseudonym to protect the corporation that they were building. So when you see that Nelson Rockefeller, of course, David's brother, you see that who he really is, and this is the big key individual that's involved with the JFK event that I've uncovered. Nelson Rockefeller is actually Tex Ritter. Now, Tex Ritter is a very well-known singer back in those times in the 60s and 50s. He basically put the Arizona on the map for the Westerns. He shot, I believe it was 80-some Westerns in 3 years. And then, of course, he went out to New York and founded the RKO Pictures. And he was one of the pioneers when it comes to the radio, TV, and just that whole history that we have in the United States. When you see that person playing key roles in all these events, it really shows that I believe that the real name is Ritter. And Ritter comes from, of course, Germany. You can trace their family back to Germany. So, and you can trace them back to royals. I do believe that the Rockefeller family would be Ritter family. Now, I can't say that 100%, but I'm leaning really strongly in that direction. And those individuals, like Tex, and we see David Kenneth Ritter, who played Ruby for the assassination. They all have an alma mater that's in UT in Austin. That's where you see, of course, the alternative media stemming from Alex Jones and all these key players. And Alex Jones, of course, has a couple individuals that are on his staff that are Ritters. So you see that connection to those families apparent easily in the alternative, or what we think is alternative media, but it's actually just the media just created again. So the ties to the corporations like Clear Channel and Disney are there, and it's the same conglomerates that own the alternative media that own the mainstream media, and it's nothing different. It's just a different perspective that they give us, or they try to show us one extreme of an event and the other extreme, and that's how they basically scam the people to believing that this event's real. And that's what they've been doing forever. They've done it since the Roman times, and you can trace back through history.
So basically, we've got a group of families that somewhere way back when got together and said, "Look, we're just gonna run the planet, and this is how we're gonna do it. We're all gonna play multiple roles," and they planned this whole thing. I mean, that what do you think?
Well, let's put it this way. We see those castles overseas. Those castles are massive. Somebody had massive amounts of money to build those things, and somebody lived in them. They were the people that were in control of those countries. So where do you think all those people went to? Where do you think all that money went to? Well, it went into investments, and they have even more money now than they did back in those days. So back in the times when kings, ruled the peasants, how do you rule the peasants? Well, you have to rule them by fear, because you can't, educate them, because then they could possibly cause problems. You need to keep them as dumb as possible and keep them obeying you and make sure that there's no threat to your position as the leader. So how do they do it? Well, they create religion. They create, this fear. The people didn't know how to read, so they went to their, of course, religious leaders, and they relied on them to translate what God would want them to do, and that's where the whole religious belief system came into play. So there's always been this fear, and that's the way they control. So just, thousands of years later, you have the same individuals, their family members, their descendants that you can trace back, doing the same thing with the media and the military. They just control with this fear and this illusion that they create and that people believe. Now, the TV, the technology has been such an advance. Like I said, back when I was a child, we only had a very limited amount of television stations that we had to look at. So it was very simple for them to manipulate us back then. So nowadays you have, thousands of channels. But when you look at it, who owns those channels? Okay, it's the same family members that own all the other publications, all the books, the distribution of all those books. It's the same people over and over again that control everything that we see and we believe is our world around us. So you have to assume that it's the same mentality that was in play back in those times that's in play today.
Yeah, sometimes you watch these movie actors, like a couple folks on TV have an interview or something, and there's some sort of knowing look. You get that vibe that they know.
Yeah.
But this, if it's as old as it is, obviously they are very, very good at what they do. It's been very well planned out, and I guess, can you imagine being born into one of these families, and then when you're at the right age, when you can start to understand, they let you in on the secret and say, look, this is how we do it, and this is what you're going to do, and that would be probably how they do it. And then these people know and nobody else knows, and you keep your mouth shut, or else it's the biggest taboo there is, and blah blah blah.
Sure. Well, in those photographs that I found, those family albums, there was a section that had Benjamin Kaplan. Now, if you don't recognize that name, Kaplan's name is very large in the marketing when it comes to music. They marketed the Jackson 5. They go back in a long time. But Benjamin Kaplan was one of the Nuremberg trial lawyers. So you have a very good connection right there when it comes to the media and this family that I've been looking at. Well, there's the photographs of Benjamin's, I believe it was his 93rd birthday, and here he is, and he's standing next to a little display, and on that display it had a tree, a family tree, and it said family tree on it, and there was a bunch of pictures on it. And you see the rest of the photographs in that album where he's standing in front of basically all the small children that are in the family. So I would assume, I guess it's pretty safe to say that they're teaching the family tree, and they're teaching them the history of where their family comes from. So that's the real story that they get. It's pretty funny when you think about it. That it's yes, it is an indoctrination that they go on under, but when they get to a certain age, but and people ask me this all the time. They say, well, isn't it illegal what they're doing? Isn't it a scam, or is it a fraud? Is it a criminal act? And as far as I can tell, when I've spoken to several lawyers about it, no, it's not, because nobody's forcing you to believe what you see on TV. Nobody's told you that when you buy that TV and you take it home and you plug it in, that what you see on that screen is real. So to assume that it's real would be the mistake number one. Now, the FCC has rules that they have to follow, and there's a rule called the hoax rule. Now, free air broadcast is different from cable or your satellite. That's a subscription-based. Subscription-based, they can show you anything they want, and you've bought into that subscription, so it's your decision if you want to believe it or not. But when it comes to the free air, when it comes to that broadcast over the airwaves, they have to abide by the hoax rule. And what that is if you see something that they broadcast and you know that it's fake, you notify the station manager with a registered letter, so it identifies who you are and it gives you a receipt that they received the letter, and you explain to them, this is a hoax, you can't air this anymore. And technically they're supposed to drop that story and never air it again, because if they do, they could be held accountable and you can get their license pulled through the FCC. Now, the lawyers of the network will not play with that. They don't take chances like that, because that's their bread and butter, is their license. If they don't have the license, they don't exist. So you'll see an immediate action when it comes to what I just said, and they will abide by that rule. So when it comes to the children, okay, an actor is an actor. It's a legitimate career, and like I said, I love movies, so there's actors that are doing it for the right reason. When you see them take that skill, and trust me, they're very skilled. You'll never hear me tell you that these individuals are not skilled at all, because they are the top and just cream of the crop when it comes to it. Even though they're played favorites with, and they do get the roles above everyone else, when they get that role, they have to bring their A game, or they just can't do it. If the viewing audience doesn't like them, then they just can't play that part. So they have to be good at what they do, and they are very good. So they're using this skill, though, to con the people. And it's not really a con, because nobody's forcing anybody to believe it. It's up to you. It's a buyer beware world, which is the problem, and people don't understand that. But the other thing that it's sort of almost crosses the line is when you see the missing children, or you see these events where they automatically put up that donation site. And, please give to my GoFundMe site, to offset my damages for my hospital bills and all that. And at that point, you're getting real close to crossing that line. But still, nobody's made you donate to them. You've decided to on your own accord with what you've seen. And what they're doing is acting. So it's their First Amendment right, their freedom of speech. Basically, they can do what they want and call it, this is their craft, this is my job, I'm an actor. So they're covered by a lot of these different loopholes that they're going to use. But the people that would be held accountable, if we were to get to that point, would be the station managers or the individuals that know that it's a hoax. Say for the Columbine event, we know that that's a hoax. We know that it was a drill. We have the footage. We see the officials dragging the dummy around and then repositioning the fire truck and then dragging the dummy around again and then repositioning the fire truck and dragging it around again in front of the kids. We've seen them take many takes with this dummy that they're dragging. It is obvious it's a dummy. They leave it in the puddle and then walk away from it. It's not a body. That's period. It's a drill, because police don't carry dummies around in the back of their cars and wait for school shootings to bring a dummy out and use it to scare kids. So it's obviously that was a drill. So we know that now. But when they were filming it, of course, the people that are filming it, they station the news and all that, they know, they see it. They see them carrying around a dummy. But at the point where it gets to the station and they decide to edit it in a way to make it deceive the public that they're now showing it to, that right there is a problem. And then you see from that event, there was over 900 pieces of legislation entered into our government, but I believe only 90 of them were actually signed into law, or it might have been a little bit less than that. But still, those laws were created out of a perception that is a lie. That's when I have a big problem. So the government officials that are our elected officials, again, we see tied to the media, and the media now showing a false event and using that event to profit from and to pass legislation there is a huge scam that's being played on the public at that point. But again, we have the pseudonym role, the pseudonym clause that allows them to get around it.
This, boy, this is, in my book, this is on the borderline of being, well, we'll call it the makeup mafia, or an organized crime group of families, if you will, that are perpetrating a multifaceted fraud internationally, so global and so widespread that none of our existing laws have the scope to actually cover it.
Well, I mean, there has been occasions where some of them have crossed the line, and I've filed whistleblower papers on a few of them, and one of them happens to be the CEO of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. Mark, during the IPO of the company, his real name is Jacob Michael Greenberg, and another name is Jake Becker that he uses. The person, Jacob Michael Greenberg, was arrested during the IPO period when Facebook went IPO in Arizona for drug possession and paraphernalia possession. A minor thing, but still, if you're going IPO and you're the CEO of a company, that has to be disclosed to the SEC. Has to be. Now, since Jacob Michael Greenberg was arrested, who plays Mark Zuckerberg, who doesn't exist, there's no connection between that real person that was arrested and the fictitious person that we believe is the CEO of the company. So there's no legal rule that says that they have to, of course, announce that. Now, you as an investor in Facebook, there's a problem right there, because I'm investing in a company that the CEO is not who he says he is. And then come to find out, when you look at that arrest record and you see his actual age, the whole story of him being in Harvard and him inventing this company is now a lie, because he was too young for that. So right there, you have a huge problem. You're investing in a company that says their beginnings were such, and this is what they put on their SEC file, their paperwork, and it's a lie. Who's behind it? What's the real story? Okay, well, there's people investing their hard-earned money into this situation. They need to know who owns that company. Now, when I filed those whistleblower papers, immediately they jumped into action, and you see that they sealed up their IPO paperwork till 2016. And this is when I filed it back in 2011 or 2012, I believe. So they immediately jumped on that and tried to block anybody from seeing those papers. And if you go to the SEC site and you pull up their paperwork, it says this. It shows you the court form what they filed, and it shows that they've sealed the documents till 2016. Now, that to me, if that's not a sign of guilt, then I don't know what is. But so obviously they were protecting something there. Now, as the investors that lost money or made money on the deal, still they're investing in something that's a fraud. And I can say that that's a fraud because it is a fraud. It's a criminal act that they didn't reveal that information to the people. Now, the other individuals that we've talked about, they're not criminals. I've never accused them of a crime because we can't find a crime that they've actually committed, and the loopholes get them out of it. So if I were to say they were a criminal, then I could be held accountable for libel, basically. But I'm very specific when I say that they're not committing a crime, except for a few, like Jacob Michael Greenberg. That's a crime. So we have to be very careful when you say a mafia syndicate, a criminal organization. You can't say that. You can't lump them all into one group because each individual has to be held accountable for their own actions. And like I said, they're not breaking the laws in most cases, which unfortunately is the case.
Yeah, I clarify. I did say borderline.
Yeah.
Don't
want you to get in trouble there.
It has the tone of it. It has the scent, if you will.
Yes.
We often on this network we have people that talk about the name fraud and the straw man versus the real person in law and in the court system, and how the all capital letters may mean something else. That's not the real person; it's a straw man. But this takes that to an entirely different level. It just takes that and puts it in a whole new perspective.
Yes, and especially since they're elected officials, that's the key thing. Somebody, if the whole thing about a pseudonym name is you're allowed to create a pseudonym, you're allowed to be a pseudonym, but as long as it's created for genuine purposes and not to hide the fact that, say, you're a felon or to use for a malicious purpose, that's that's against the law. You can't use a pseudonym for that. So as an elected official, when you come to find out that some of these people that I've exposed have felony backgrounds for DUIs and things like that, that they've broken the law by creating that pseudonym. No matter what they try to hide behind, that pseudonym creation was done to hide the fact that they have a criminal past. That's a crime. So there are individuals that we can go after. We just need to find out exactly who they are. And we're working on that. We've identified quite a few of them as their birth name, but we can't. It's very difficult to say for sure if that's really their birth name, because only them and their mother knows. So it's very difficult to prove. Paperwork can be faked, and there's certain states that are very loose when it comes to giving you identification, and Ohio being one of them, where you only need, I believe it was basically a marriage license and a utility bill to get a license. So you see there's a lot of them that stem from that area. And then combine that with the fact that women, of course, are it's understood that they're going to use a second name, a different name when they get married. It really allows them to have a lot of leeway when it comes to creating these fake individuals. As long as you have that driver's license that you can get from that state, it makes it very easy to do things. But the elected officials don't ever have to even go that route. So people ask me all the time, well, how do they get paid? How, they're not doing it for free. How do they get their paychecks? Well, that's what agents are for. That's what studios are for. Their agent takes care of all that and pays them. You pay the agent. You pay the studio. So right there, the person that you need to go look at are the agents of the actors, because they're going to be in the know.
It just seems now that, with the scope of this, that there is so much infrastructure built around this very thing that, that this is older than governments. So it's older than the laws. It's older than court systems. And we, in fact, we have folks that are in the court systems that, that are judges. So at the very top levels, this is an underlying permeation. It's almost like a secret society. Well, it is.
Well, let's look at it this way. I had a recent event that I was able to use to get some perspective on exactly what you're saying here. I was wrongly arrested on my property for carrying my handgun, taking to my vehicle, which is not against the law. And I was on the common grounds walking to my vehicle, and I was arrested. They tried to say that because I was a shared owner in the complex, that the common ground was not 100% in my control, which the law states that you have to be in 100% control of the place that you're in, and your weapons, there's limitations for what you're supposed to do with that, which I followed all those steps. So come to find out, after I lost my first case, we appealed it, and then I won the second case. Well, the DA at that time decided he was going to take it to the next level. We went to the Supreme Court with my case, and the Supreme Court in Austin is the court of last hope. It's the court. It was interesting. While I was in that courtroom, sitting in front of me was Tom DeLay. Now, Tom DeLay is a known politician. Tom DeLay being, of course, a pseudonym. DeLay, playing the game again with the names. I knew he was not a real person, but of course a government official. Now, he's in there in the same courtroom and has the same judges that I have sitting in front of me. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, okay, how is this person in here, when I know my trial's real and I know that person's fake, how is this going, how is this happening? Well, I honestly, I believe that, let's say an event where there is a known person that's arrested for committing a crime. The sheriff is the one that's in control of that prisoner. The sheriff is always the one that takes care of the jails, transports the prisoner to and from court. When we see these fake events on the news, pay close attention to if the city has a real police force or if the sheriff is used as the police force, because there's some cases where that may be. But if there's a place like, say, Dallas here, where we have a Dallas Police Department and we have a sheriff's department, we also have marshals too. If you see the sheriff leading up an investigation of a murder in Dallas, there's something wrong. That's not going to happen. It's going to be a Dallas police or the Dallas detective that's going to head up that investigation. So when you pay attention to these events and you see that it's always the sheriff that seems to be the one that's the key point man when it comes to the investigation of that event, or the playing the lead role, and you know that they have a police department or an FBI in a case of a missing child, and you don't see the FBI involved, you see the, for example, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. That right there, that's a private company that was turned into a fusion center. So if you don't see the FBI involved in that, you go, wait a second, who are these people that are running this show? Now, the sheriff being in control of the prisoner, okay, so we see this prisoner getting taken into custody. We see this prisoner standing in front of a judge. That judge and that lawyer might not necessarily understand that situation, that person that they're representing or that they're making a judgment on, could possibly be an actor that the sheriff then, of course, takes back to the jail and they just let go. And the actor shows up for the next court case, and then they bring him into the court. So the judge doesn't necessarily have to know that this is a fake event. They might not know at all. They may, but they might not. The lawyer might not know at all. So we can't say that the whole legal system is involved in a scam, because I do believe some of them are, definitely. But to blanket and say the whole legal system is involved, I can't say that. I can't feel comfortable with that. So yeah, there's people that'll call me up and say, well, my father's a judge, he's not fake. And I'm like, yeah, he might not be, but obviously some of the cases that he tries might be, and he just doesn't know it. So that's where I stand on that position.
So it would only take a few key individuals in a few key places. Let's say a sheriff like Joe Arpaio or something.
Yeah.
Or a mayor of Chicago, something like that.
Yeah.
Individuals that are in a few key places, maybe a judge here and a prosecutor there, but not everyone, that all know the inside story, what's going on, that could very easily manipulate things, like somebody that has a power to approve some sort of approval to have a different agency investigate something.
Sure. When you look at, say, the Giffords event, let's also look at the Unabomber. Let's look at the Oklahoma City bombing, and what's the other one? I'm trying to think of the woman that drowned her kids, drove her car off the embankment into the water and drowned her 2 kids. I can't remember her name, but those individuals that I just mentioned are all represented by one so-called lawyer, and that's Susan Clark. Now, when you find out that she's an actor, and I've identified who she is, when you find out that one actor was involved in all those events, same as like a Gloria Allred, all the events that she has represented, they're all fake. They're all staged events. So those major court trials that we see, the lawyers that are involved in those they're not who they say they are. So those events are different than some of the ones that we see on the news, and those lawyers may be real, representing a fake client that they just don't even know are real. But so there's that whole dichotomy between all these different things that we have to understand and break it all down to common sense and reality. And you just have to start looking at these events from a legal perspective. And like I said, when you see the news media saying a name of a minor that's associated with an event, then you know that that's not real. They can't do that. They'll be sued. So from that point on, you know that everything that they say about that event is fake. Everything that they say is scripted out, and it's very difficult for some people to handle. They don't understand that. How could we be lied to this long? How can these people that we see on the screen, that these individuals that we've trusted to give us the news about these events that we modify our personal lives, we go to war for, we believe that they're telling us these facts when they're not. And it's a very for some people it's very difficult, and it's a very traumatic experience for them. And I've had many people contact me over the years, and they've explained this thing that I call the emotional roller coaster, where you start off and you're in denial. This guy's crazy. I don't even want to hear it. This guy's a nutcase. And then all of a sudden you start to listen to what I'm saying, and you start to apply these certain rules to the things that you see, and you go, wait a second, this guy's got some things here that are correct. I might not agree with everything that he says. I might not agree with who this actor is, who that actor is, but if there's one actor that's an elected official, that means it could happen, and that's a problem. So then they start to take this personal journey where they start to do their own research, and it takes them all the way to the point where they hit rock bottom, where they're just in tears that they've been lied to about everything. All our history books are written by these individuals. They're published by those individuals that own those printing presses, who are the royals. They're distributed by the same people that are the royals. they are not going to put anything in those books that's going to undermine the lie. So everything that you read in that is going to be based on this lie. And when you start to realize how massive the fraud is, it takes people to the point of they're just broken. And I've had people call me up and just say, Ed, after I finally hit that rock bottom, it felt like somebody kicked me in the gut. Just felt like I was physically just drained and just brought to the point where I was just broken. But they all end on this one point. Once you hit that rock bottom, you start to realize that the world is a much better place than we've been led to believe. People are the same the world over. I don't care if you're, and I've said this many times, if you're a goat herder in Afghanistan or you're a construction worker in New Jersey, you all want the same thing for your life. You all want a safe place to raise your family. You want a place, an ability to be able to provide for them, and you want to be left alone. You don't want government encroaching on your life. Everybody wants the same thing. It doesn't matter who you are. So when you realize that the world is so much better than this evil place that we've been shown on the TV and we've come to believe is real, you get a whole rush of energy and an emotion where you want to tell everybody. It becomes a weight lifted off your shoulder that this isn't such a bad place at all. And at that point, that's when these people would go out and they'd tell a friend. And this is where the problem they run into. If the person that you're talking to, say you're a spouse or your parent or your sibling, if you tell them about this, the things that you see and you understand to be real, if they're not on the same level or close to that level of understanding, they will look at you as you're crazy. It doesn't matter if you show them 1,000 smoking guns and this picture, look, here's the vein pattern in the back of the hand. You can't deny that. And they'll just look at you as if you're speaking a different language. And they'll look at you and say, you're crazy, you're nuts. And they immediately will build up a wall. And that wall is very difficult, and it causes a lot of problems when it comes to families, and it really causes a lot of arguments. But you have to understand that everybody's on their own personal journey, and everyone takes that journey at their own speed. You can't force somebody to come to your level of understanding because they'll look at you as you're threatening their reality. And at that point, even if you're saying, no, I'm not threatening your reality, I'm trying to help you out and help you take away all that time that you spend watching the news and believing all that crap. You could be spending it doing something else. They look at you as you're an alien and you're attacking their reality, and it's bad. So for people out there that have experienced this, I talk to them all the time, and they're like, how can I tell my parents? How can I tell my brother, my wife, my husband? I'm like, you can't really. You can suggest it and put it out there, and if they react in a positive way, great. If not, you have to just back off and let them find it at their own speed. So it's very, very difficult for people to handle sometimes.
I might as well be telling them the world is flat.
I get plenty of those people trying to convince me of that too, and I'm like, look, I know enough about science and I know enough about astronomy, but they'll still try.
No, if history has been manipulated by these folks. But anyway, that's a whole other show.
Yeah.
Thought I'd throw that in there. Now, here's another half-ended question. You don't believe in alien shape-shifting reptilians now, do you?
No. That it is funny. I was just talking to a friend about that, where she brought up the aliens, the lizard people ruling the world. And I said, David Icke, he's the one who basically was a pioneer of that. And I said, if you know who David Icke is, he's Gary Newman, the musician. Gary Newman's first album was Music for Chameleons. So again, you see the play on words, the just interface type of thing. But he's also making the reference to a chameleon being an actor. So you can take it either way, and just understand that he's basically making fun of us for believing it and people taking it literally. But he's a character. He's a creation, a pseudonym. So,
yeah, I don't watch TV anymore, very, very rarely. But when I used to years ago, there was a point I was watching some sitcoms, and I don't even know which one. But I started to get insulted because I was like thinking, these guys are making fun of people. It was almost that's the feeling you get in some of these shows. And then when you apply this underlying deception, like for example the Saturday Night Live crew, which is heavily involved, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Then it starts to make sense a little more, and just the level of the lies. Like for example, John F. Kennedy's assassination. That occurred, right? I mean, there was an action that occurred.
Well, if there was an action, okay. I just found a photograph today. I forget who the photographer was, but it's a well-known, established photograph. It was one of the AP press people that jumped off the press car that was following it and took the picture of individuals that were on the knoll and the other reporters that had jumped off the car too. But I showed that in the background there's an individual that's standing in the middle of the plaza, and the shadow that's cast from this individual is opposite direction almost from the individuals that are standing very close to the camera and are the press people. You can see this. It's very obvious that that is a faked photograph. Now, how fake is it? If you look at the background, honestly, it looks like there is a backdrop put in place because the shadows on the hill, and I'm from Dallas. I've been down there numerous times. Of course, I worked on Grodin's books. I did a sketch of the plaza. I spent a lot of time down there looking at it. The background looks very flat to me, and I don't know if it is or not, but it just doesn't seem – it seems like it's an insert. So whether or not the photograph has been faked or if it's on a set somewhere, which is very possible, the underlying thing to take away from it is the fact that all the individuals that are the eyewitnesses that say they were there are all related, and majority of them are royals, or they're both royal and are members of some of the Hall of Fame music industry. So some of them are from the Grand Ole Opry, some of them are from the Country Music Hall of Fame, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Rockabilly Hall of Fame, but they all have this tie to music. And when you see that Ritter Carter Music Association, their management company, was the main players, and of course I said David Kenneth Ritter was Ruby, you see that there's a tie into the music industry and all the individuals that were there. So you can't say that it's just a coincidence that they just happen to be there, and majority of them being royals. So whether or not an event actually took place in Dealey Plaza, or if it was just acted out, and there was, like I said, all the eyewitnesses claim to say, they say that it sounded like a firecracker going off. They all say that. So if there was a firecracker going off, they're not lying. And maybe there was the president going through, and maybe he did fall down at that time in the car, and that firecracker did go off, so giving the illusion of people that were there. But most of the people that were in that plaza that day were identified. And most of them, like I said, are all associated with one another. So I can't tell you for sure if they role played it through, but you can see like Mary Mormon and Jean Hill. Mary Mormon talks about, she's standing right there talking to the reporter, saying that they looked at a dog sitting in between them, talking about the president and Jackie, a dog sitting in the seat between them. There was no dog sitting there. There was a bunch of roses, but you mean to tell me that she's 20 feet away from a car and she can't tell a bunch of roses from a dog? So maybe they're talking about the other role the other event, the other scene that they shot, because Jack Ruby supposedly was he bred wiener dogs basically. So I don't know if they're talking about that, if they're talking about a different scene that they were in, but needless to say, to say that there was a dog sitting between the president and you're 20 feet away from him is very, very suspect to me. So I can't say for sure, but we do know that this Zapruder film was doctored. We do know that, of course, the individuals involved in it are actors. How far they went with it, I don't know, but we didn't see the Zapruder film for 13 years after the event. So they had plenty of time to do whatever they wanted to do with it. And they could have, it's like I said, during that time, there was not that many, there was three networks, and they were all involved in it. WFAA, which is right down the street from Dealey Plaza, they have ties to the owners of Dealey Plaza. They're ties to the Hearst family. So, it all happened on Hearst property, basically. And it's mind-boggling to think about. But, yeah, for the past 50 years, they've been lying to us. And we've believed everything that we know about the assassination has come from these individuals that say they're eyewitnesses or family members. So, yeah, they easily could have pulled it off.
And, of course, we know that later on the individual that played John F. Kennedy went on to become president again, didn't he?
That's correct. And that's one thing that people it boggles their mind. But then when you look at Jackie and you look at Jackie and Rosalind, they're the same individual. And then when you see I did the back of the veins of his hand, we did the ears, we did the teeth, we did the facial landmarks. We've done everything that we can do when it comes to the biometrics of them. I found some recent photographs, though, that I'm going to use of the other hand, and we're going to show that that's the same as well. So there's one video, or there's one footage of Jackie and of Rosalind together, but they're not really together. They're about 20 feet apart. There's definite questions when it comes to the authenticity of that video. There's perspective problems. There's some serious issues that, of course, if you're trying to pull this hoax off, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to want to put them together in the same footage to make sure that nobody ever goes that route and investigates it. So that's the only footage of those two being together. And all the other times when all the first ladies were supposed to gather for a photograph, one of them, either Jackie or Rosalind, was out of the country at the time. They always was never there. And of course, when you see Marilyn Monroe singing to the president, there's no Jackie there. There's those little things that are added evidence that just add to the whole thing. But when you look at the fact that the biometrics are solid, and then you see the connection between Carter and the music industry and the people that were allegedly part of that so-called assassination, the connections are there. It's all family.
Absolutely. That's amazing. Well, we have a few minutes left. I'm just going to quickly go over a couple other mind blowers that people aren't aware of. There's Jimi Hendrix, who was or is the individual that plays Morgan Freeman.
Sure. And the funny thing, I just watched a Pierce, what's his name, the talk show host. He had Jesse Ventura on, and Jesse comes out and he's got a Jimi Hendrix shirt on underneath, and of course he talks about Jimi Hendrix for a good portion of one of the scenes, and this goes into play with what I tell people. The family will promote the family. They only promote from within. They cross-promote their family members, and that's all you'll ever hear them do because, of course, if they're owned by a corporation, they can't promote anybody that's from a different corporation. That would be against their corporate charter. So everybody that you see them promoting, or they say, oh, who are your influences to Tina Fey? Everybody that she names are family members. They're all pushing, the Monty Python guys and all that type of connections. So when you see the Morgan Freeman situation, Freeman, of course, it's another play on the words, and Jimi Hendrix, we know that Jimmy and, of course, Freeman were in the military. Now, at the time, Jimmy was, I believe, was it Freeman? Yeah, Morgan was in the Army, and I can't remember. I get him mixed up. It might have been Jimmy. Jimmy was in the Army, and he was not a very good soldier. But yet he got a bunch of accommodations and medals right before they kicked him out. Now, I don't understand how you do that. If you're going to get a bunch of awards and medals, they don't just kick you out. So here's what I believe takes place. The military, they have spies. I was in the military. I know there's espionage that goes on all the time. They have to know what's going on in other countries. Well, they think they have to know. They probably don't, but that's another story. So how do you get a spy into a situation? Well, do you hire the guy that's fresh out of the academy, with the buzz crew cut and looks like a military guy? No. Or do you hire Oprah? Or do you hire, a well-known musician that can just walk into a foreign official's living room and sit down and have a chat with them? Julia Childs it was rumored that she was part of a spy network, it's understandable because if you're going to have spies, who would you want? You would want celebrities. So to create these celebrities, a lot of them have ties to military. Are they spies? I don't know. I can't say for sure of all of them, but there are definite ones that, let's say, George Clooney, these actors that all of a sudden take on these nonprofits overseas. Those individuals, to me, are very suspect for their high-profile, positions over there in a foreign country, and their ability to then gather information for, of course, the United States. And believe me, it's played from both ends of the spectrum. The foreign countries, they send their people over here as well, which a lot of Hollywood is not from the United States. So you see that there's a possibility that these individuals can't talk about what they've done because they're classified. It's a government operation, but it's a legitimate spy ring. That's acceptable when it comes to the military. That's what they do. Now, but when you look at the fact that when they kill off this character, the Jimi Hendrix, and then they go to the next step where they then bump up all the merchandise that's signed by him, his guitars, and they sell that merchandise at outrageous legend levels. That to me is a scam. It's a complete scam. And
we only got about a minute left. I want to give you an opportunity real quick to give your website out. Sure.
Wellaware One, and that's with the number 1.com.
All right. And we have been talking with Chiarini. the Dallas Goldbugs, I could do a whole nother show, and you are more than welcome to come back anytime.
Oh, I love it. Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have a very good weekend and a good evening, sir.
You too. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Night.
Listen to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
Take a look around, kid. What do you see? Homes being foreclosed. People working 2-3 jobs just to put food on the table and still drowning in debt. Don't get me wrong. This country was founded on great ideals and principles. They've all been ruined by the banks. Open your eyes to banks that are robbing you. You know who my favorite president was? Who? Thomas Jefferson. Because he saw all of this coming and tried to stop it. He fought the banks. JFK too, and they killed him for it. The banking institution is more dangerous than an army, he said. He also said that every generation needs a revolution, Jimmy. The American dream is just that. Just a dream. War is a continuation of politics, only by other means. Politics is a continuation of economics by other means. This is our bank. This is our war. And this is our plan of attack.
Banks have become an essential threat to our democracy. So consider this justice.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio!
Enjoy your extra big-ass fries.
You didn't give me no fries. I got an empty box.
Would you like another? Extra big-ass fries.
I said I didn't get any.
Thank you. Your account has been charged. Your balance is 0. Please